Okay.
Hi, everybody. This is Elenbaas from Nightlight Astrology. It's Tuesday, May 14th, and I'm sitting down with one of the alumni from my astrology program to discuss the course. And I thought I'd invite Kendall to talk with me today because she recently graduated from the program. And since I'm trying to promote the upcoming course that I'm teaching, I thought it would be great to have a conversation with one of my students. And Kendall is rock star student, great example of someone who did a really nice job with the program and really got a lot out of it. So I thought it would be cool to have Kendall with. So thanks for coming on and talking with me, Kendall.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Adam. It's good to be here.
Yeah. So, I mean, why don't we just start with a little background? For people who are listening to this, you might be wondering what exactly I'm talking about. So for almost 10 years now, I've taught a 1 year long and also a 2 year long first and second year course in natal astrology. So I've led hundreds of students through this program. It's a program that's designed to teach ancient foundational philosophical and methodological concepts coming from the Hellenistic era of astrology, but also really deeply rooted in the spiritual values that ancient mystics had. And then, so we really dig into these core topics of astrology. And then as we go along, we're figuring out, okay, so how do we take this ancient mystical wisdom and apply it to working with people in the modern world? And in a kind of therapeutic, client-centered, kind of like a counseling session, but it's, how do you take ancient astrological wisdom and use it in a modern astrological client setting? So in the first 20 lessons or so of the 30 lessons that I teach in this program, we're digging into the history, the philosophy, and really getting down to nuts and bolts. What are houses? What are signs? What are planets? What are aspects? What are dignities? Where do these things come from? Not just what are they, memorize them and combine them, but where do they all come from? Why were they ever created in the first place? Then how do you use them artfully and sensitively? How do you do accurate predictive astrology for people? And then the last 10 sessions of the 30, I invite live guest clients into the classroom and read for people, demonstrating the theory. And then after our client leaves, we have craft talk and we break down the reading, and that's how it goes. So students throughout the program also have the option. Every lesson is audio video recorded, so you can participate live online in the online classroom every week, or you can watch the video recordings of each class afterwards. They're each 2 to 3 hours long. And then there's additional optional reading, homework, quizzes, forum conversations that take place on Facebook between all of the students. And, we also host 12 guest teachers on the year in addition to the 30 lessons. Those are all optional, but they cover a range of other topics that I don't cover in the curriculum. So it's a really rich program, and I offer it. I'm offering it. It's coming up. It's starting again in June on Sundays at noon Eastern to 2 p.m. Eastern every week. Sometimes we go 2:30, 3 o'clock, depending on which lecture. But usually it's 12 to 2 p.m. Eastern. That's 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Pacific if you're on the West Coast. And so that's the gist of the program. Kendall is unique because she's taken the first year program. She's currently enrolled in the second year program. Was also going to be taking my horary course, so she'll have taken all three of my classes. So I figured she's a really good representative of the program. And she's also doing some really cool things with astrology that we want to talk about later as well. So that's the sort of gist of why I'm here talking to Kendall today. I want you guys to know more about the program from someone who's actually taken it, as opposed to just hearing me talk about it. So Kendall, let's start with where you were at when you took the program, like what you already knew about astrology, and what led you to wanting to take an astrology class.
Yeah, so where I was at, I had very basic understanding of astrology. I didn't really understand the planets, the houses, or the signs. I knew a little. Sorry. Sorry about that. My phone off. There, okay, it's on airplane mode now.
No worries. I should turn off mine just in case. Actually, mine's on too. Go ahead.
I didn't really know much about astrology beyond what I would read in like horoscopes that were shared over social media about this is the time to expand your consciousness and stuff like that every full moon. Um, my my grandmother was an astrologer, and so I started getting. I wanted to study astrology when she took a bad fall, and it wasn't sure whether or not she would live for much longer. And so for me, that felt like a time that I wanted to start learning astrology. So I came to the course with like exposure to astrology and openness to it, but really not even like a foundational understanding in modern astrology.
Right. So that's a good distinction to make. Like some people come to my class and they're like, I already know something about astrology. And a lot of times what they don't realize is that they've had some training in modern forms of astrology, sort of psychological forms of astrology, but they really know, most people actually know very, very little about ancient astrology. And it's connected to modern astrology. It's similar, but it's also very, very different. The methods, theories, and practices of astrologers 2,000 plus years ago were very different than they are now. And the course is really about, for people who have already know something about astrology, is really great because you're building a much deeper core knowledge of the history and practices of ancient astrologers. But it's also sort of ideal for total beginners because, like Kendall, like if you know something about very little about astrology, then you're getting to start you're getting to start really at the very beginning, the classical roots, and you work your way upward, and you don't have to undo a lot of bad habits that are often learned through modern astrology. So, for example, modern astrologers will frequently associate the 12 signs and their meanings with the 12 houses. This was largely not done by Hellenistic astrologers. So we have to relearn the difference between signs and houses and what really distinguishes their meaning and value interpretively when we're reading a chart. Those are things that most people really who have studied modern astrology, they don't even realize it's a thing. But Kendall, you were really in a good position because you were sort of starting totally from scratch. And in that sense, again, it's sort of like you're not going to have to undo a lot of things that people end up having to undo when they take the program, which I think probably benefited you.
I think so too. Yeah, I definitely felt like I needed to do a little bit of catch-up work at the beginning because I had never looked at charts before, so I didn't even know the glyphs of which glyph was Mars and which glyph was Venus, whereas some of the other students in the class just had more of an understanding of looking at a chart and knowing what was what and having an understanding of what the signs were. So I had to put in a little bit more work personally just to like get up to speed. But I appreciated being able to just start with the perspective that we were learning in class.
Yeah, and that's something that I should mention. The other thing is that having every year the program, gets a little bit better, I think. And one of the things that I've done in my upcoming class, which might have benefited you a lot, Kendall, is I've added more remedial bonus lectures for people who are like brand new, because most of the people who come into the program already have a little bit of background in astrology. They know something about the signs, houses, planets. They might be able to identify the glyphs. And realizing that I've had more students coming with like basically zero knowledge, just a real interest in astrology, I've created a lot more remedial content for the new course. So meaning a lesson that's just like, here are the 12 glyphs. Here's why they look the way that they look. Here, it's kind of the history of the glyphs, stuff like that. Some of the basic math that I take for granted, a lot of people take for granted, like there's 30 degrees per sign, or, just simple things like that. So hopefully there'll be a little bit more of that. But the interesting part about your story is, so what were you hoping, I want to back up just a second. What were you hoping to get out of the course? Like, what were your intentions for taking it?
Yeah, so my intentions for taking it, I think, well, one of the intentions that I took it, I'd been I'd been doing some herbal studies for a couple years, and the course format was we would meet one weekend a month. And I was able to learn a lot from those courses, but I knew that my learning style to really digest and integrate something is that I needed something regular and something that met real frequently. And I was, as an herbal student, I was interested in astrology as like a potential way to, like
A
as a way
diagnostic tool, right? Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
But I was mostly taking the course for myself. Like I wasn't intending to become a professional astrologer. I just wanted to learn about astrology. I wanted to like sink my teeth into something without the expectation of what would come.
Mhm.
Um, and and then as I got into it, I just wanted to do more and more.
Yeah, and I mean that's an incredible thing about that's it's an incredible thing to watch that occur for actually a lot of students. They take the course because they love astrology. They know it means something to them. It's a call, or you're bit by the bug. Sometimes you'll hear people say, but then the way that it grows on you and the way that you deepen into it is really unexpected for a lot of people. I think a lot of people don't expect to fall in love with astrology as deeply as they do once you get into a guided, structured curriculum and program and community full of people who are getting to know each other for a year. And um, the I think a lot of people discover what astrology has in store for them more than they come into the program knowing exactly what they're going to do with astrology. And I think that's actually preferable. I mean, some people say, well, they'll come to the program, they'll say, will I be able to read charts for people? And I'm like, well, if you do all the homework and you follow along and you're motivated, then yeah, you should be able to. But there are also intangibles, and there's such a thing as a calling. And astrology is not just about making people into astrologers. It's a spiritually transformative experience that teaches you how to understand reality and your life differently. It gives you like a karmic language that helps you understand the ups and downs of life, and the way you can't anticipate the way that that's going to change you, especially when you get into really deep esoteric ancient astrological wisdom. It's not just pop psychology, self-help, and like it's not just using your chart to like describe your personality. When you get into ancient astrology, it's for example, one of my students today, Spencer, Spencer, Spencer today, he mentioned a story, right, where a relative of his, he had looked at his chart, and there was a third house transit in a third house profection year that was pretty intense. And he had said something might happen that's pretty intense with one of your siblings. And that individual's sibling's child just died today. And ancient astrology has psychological elements involved, but it's highly predictive as well. It really is teaching us about the science of karma. And when you get into that at a deep level and the reality of it hits you, it changes you, I think. I don't know, how did you change as the program went on?
Yeah, well, I think that definitely the distinction around that a natal chart can be a description of a person's life environment versus just a description of a person's psychology changed a lot about how I thought about astrology. And yeah, I think it somehow has enabled me to have a little bit more of an outside view of the events that are going on in my life and in the mundane world, and understanding the fluctuations of life and the different qualities of the day and qualities of events, and also some of like the wisdom in transits that like it might be a good idea to kind of take a pause and not move forward and wait and see, has been very useful like in my day-to-day life.
Oh yeah, that's a great point. In fact, I was just doing a horary earlier today. Horary is another topic, but it's a different kind of reading. And in the reading, you know, I was looking at should I do something or not, making a choice. This was my own chart that I was casting. And the important signifier is Mars at the tail end of Gemini, just about to enter its fall in Cancer. And it was a very clear indication of like, let's just hold up on that, you know?
Yeah.
So astrology it's amazing because it will help you understand karma and fate. It'll also help you make better decisions and learn to navigate your life more consciously. Ancient astrologers almost unanimously believed that fate and free will interacted in deeply mysterious ways. They wouldn't have said one existed without the other. And as astrologers, I feel like you really get to kind of flip open the you know, the hood of the cosmic car that we're all in, like look at it, and if nothing else, it's just really beautiful to behold, and it kind of changes you from the inside out as a result. So Kendall, the other thing that really interests me about your story is that you actually took the first year program twice. Tell people about that and what that process was like for you, and just what you got out of going through just the first year program 2 times.
Definitely. Yeah. So I think that for me, like being a total beginner to astrology, when I took, so I had like a lot of, I just had to just learn a little bit more on my own. And I was also going through some major life transitions that year. I think I was working overtime. I was working like 60-hour weeks. I was like waitressing at night, and then I was working at preschool, and then I had an hour break and my car was breaking down. It was just like really busy. And then I was working full time and trying to start a business. And so it's like there was so much going on in my life, that I would sit in on the classes, and like I would watch the live clients and I would watch the lectures and like be taken by it. But I just didn't have like
The bandwidth.
I had no gas like in my gas tank.
Yeah, yeah.
Anything else besides try and like get a good night's sleep, because I was just working so much. So it was just life circumstance basically that I couldn't really participate in the first year as much as I would like, in terms of doing readings and really integrating the lectures. But I was so taken by the material that I wanted to learn more and I wanted to understand. And so that's why I took it a second year when things were more calm in my life.
And yeah, and then I mean, you went through the program like super successfully. And I think the lesson that I took from watching you go through that process, because I've had several students where something similar has happened. The good thing about the course, by the way, is that once you pay for the course, once you are enrolled and you finish out your tuition payments, if you're on a payment plan or whatever, you can always retake the same program for as long as I'm offering it for free, just to double up on it or to refresh on it, or if something comes up in your life. And so once you're an alumni, you can retake the program anytime for free. So that's nice. But I think what was so impressive about your process is that astrology is best learned during times of transition or during times when life is actually happening. I don't know one of my colleagues, or probably any of my like students who have been really exemplary, who have not at some point during their time studying with me gone through a major life ordeal. And it just seems to be a part. Well, first of all, life ordeals just happen, somewhat regularly. But when you're studying astrology, it's also as though the planets and stars start serving up examples of your own astrological work, so to speak, for you while you're learning it. And that seems to be a really important part of how astrology is actually learned. It's not just theory, and it's not just techniques and methods and philosophy and reading charts for people. It's also that there's a crucible usually of having to go through astrological experiences as you're learning it. I had that happen to me big time the first 3-4 years, especially of my astrological studies. And Yeah. So in fact, some of the most challenging events of my life were surrounding my decision to become a professional astrologer in the first place.
Mhm.
So I think that just sticking with it, people always say when they're wanting to register for the program, they're like, I'm not sure if it's the right time.
Mm.
And I always tell people there's never a right time. I mean, sometimes there's, times where you're like, okay, I'll take it the next time you offer it because I literally don't have any time. That's one thing. But in terms of like being in this clean, clear space where life is sort of settled and you can like, sit and sip your tea in Zen lotus, posture and just be perfectly attentive and life won't get in the way. That just doesn't happen. I've been a part of 10 years worth of teaching yoga teacher training programs at our yoga studio. And I've been doing this for almost 10 years and it just doesn't happen. But I will say this, those people who heed the call and go through with the studies, with the training, with the in training yourself to the music of the spheres, so to speak, and let the life events play out, even if you have to retake the course later. Um, those people are often you're being like vetted by the planets. This is my observation, and over a long time, again, I can say that the students who seem to do the best are the ones who stick with it, and they learn the most sometimes, even when those kinds of challenges come up. They become uh, living examples of the astrology. So I'll say that. I don't know how specifically you feel that applies to you, but I certainly sensed when you were telling me life is overwhelming me right now, but I'll be back. I was like, a lot of the times when I hear that from people, I never see them again. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
When someone actually comes back and keeps going, I'm like, wow, that's really impressive. And it almost always means that someone is really does have the call. And so as a compliment, I would say that I see that in you. And I think you've done a really nice job developing yourself in your studies.
Thank you, Adam. I appreciate that.
Um, so let's talk about your favorite parts of the course, because that would be cool for people to hear who are interested in signing up. What are the parts of it that you like the most, or what would you, if someone's like, why should I take this course? Like why would you recommend it?
I think that's something that was really cool about the course was the combination of lecture and also live client sessions. That we had like this solid chunk of time to really go into the theory um, and understand the history of astrology, and then to get to see it play out with people in real time and to see um, like the variety of client sessions and how vastly different they are from person to person. I think that that's one element of the course that's really valuable is that combination.
Yeah, I'm glad that you feel that way, because one of the things that was lacking in my own astrological education was lots of theory, lots of demonstration charts, but never, and demonstration charts are always done in hindsight, right? You're looking at Muhammad Ali's chart, his life story. It's easy to, in hindsight is 2020, right? So astrology taught in hindsight is helpful. We do look at the past often in people's charts. I start sessions sometimes saying what happened when you were 6 and at this specific time. Oh, my dad was in a motorcycle accident, whatever, or we moved or something.
Mhm.
But it's a totally different thing to have a live client sitting in front of you and to see an astrologer predict accurately, to describe accurate psychological themes and relational themes and whatever else. And then to see how those conversations are turned into spiritually valuable or therapeutic experiences, healing experiences for those people as well. How do you do all of that? A lot of the
Mhm.
times nowadays, people think of astrology mostly in the modern sense as a tool for psychological or therapeutic work, like an elaborate counseling tool. Um, but it's really quite different from that once you start adding in very specific predictive techniques, which is what ancient astrology is really all about. So when I sit down with someone, like, uh, if I sit down with someone and I say, wow, it looks like you've just had some really hard times in your relationships. What's been going on? Yeah, I just went through a breakup. It's a whole different level of insight and conversation that starts opening up when such profound esoteric experiences are happening in a session. It's not as uh, it, it's just a different dynamic. For example, than if I were to sit down with someone and say, well, you're an Aries, so you behave like this, or you're a Cancer, you behave like that. Those are interesting sessions, and we can certainly, people love talking about themselves and their psychology, and it can be very therapeutic. And a lot of people end up going to get a lot of schooling and therapy and then sort of wed psychological astrology to like a counseling practice. I have the utmost respect for people who do that kind of thing. But it's, again, it's just a different thing when you're studying karma, when you're really able to get in there with a little bit more of the astrologer's scalpel and really sort of dissect the chart and say, this time, this place, this event, and get more specific, and then marry that to inner work and that kind of inner dialogue. There's no place that you can learn that unless an astrologer is willing to show you how they've learned to do it. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So that's why I built that into my program, because if you don't see how it's done, you won't have a model for yourself for how to do it. Or even if you don't use the model that I use and you kind of go your own way, you won't have an experience that allows you to compare and contrast and shape your own approach. So I think that for that reason, they're really, I think everyone likes that the most about the program. It's like the theory, the philosophy is incredible. Playing with charts, in class demonstration mode is really fun. But then when you get to those live clients, it just goes to another level. Everyone really seems to like it.
Definitely. Another thing that I really appreciated about the program is I felt that it really opened me up to the astrological community and to astrology like as a professional field of study, which I think isn't something that I really had a grasp on. And I think that a lot of just people out there in the world who aren't that in touch with astrology don't realize that astrology is a legitimate field of study that's alive and in a Renaissance period, and that there are new texts being translated like as we speak, and that that there are a lot of really great professional astrologers out there. And so I think having guest astrologers speak, but also sharing podcast episodes and like audio recordings of other lectures just helped open me up to like the greater astrological community and the field.
That's great. Yeah, because that's the thing, is that this course is also for people who feel sort of overwhelmed or lost in the sheer amount of data that's out there online. Where do I start? What's legitimate? What's not legitimate? The course really gives you a history of all the different forms and shapes that astrology has taken. And it gives you a sense of the professional field of modern astrology as well. You get 12 guest lecturers. You get to hear about all sorts of different debates that are very current among astrologers. You get to hear about new forms versus old forms. You get to hear about all the craft distinctions that astrologers make, and just familiarizing yourself with that language and making friends and community and getting interested in other astrologers and stuff like that. It gives you some ground to stand on. Astrology, your interest or your fascination with it goes from being like clickbait that you're not sure where you're going, you're kind of piecing it all together on your own, to like, oh wow, I have a teacher that's, at this point in my career, I'm like pretty decently respected in the astrological world. I don't want to like toot my own horn or anything, but like I think people respect the work that I do. And but because of the way that I shape the program, you also get to know a lot of other really respectable and good astrologers out there. And that gives you confidence too. It helps you feel like it's not just some weird it's not some weird wormhole you're following online by yourself in the dark at night. It's like clicking away trying to find mystical teachings or something. So yeah, that's that. Thank you. That's a really nice one. Anything else that you want to add to that, or I have some more questions for you too. So
Well, I mentioned this before, but I appreciated the frequency of the class. Like I liked the regularity of meeting every week. I felt like that, and that pacing just kept it alive for me, and helped for my personal learning style.
Yeah, that's an important point. I feel like you lose people if you don't keep it pretty regular. And
Mhm.
also some people are like a whole year and it's like it flies by and you
Really
won't
good.
yeah, and you won't believe how nice it is to have regular astrological education. If you love astrology, if it really speaks to you, it's like you're drawing from a really deep well and you're getting nourished by something that it's actually really rare and precious. Like I didn't realize until quite a ways into my studies like how special it was that I had met like really legitimate great teachers and that I was being taught like good good formal means of reading a chart accurately and making accurate predictions and having meaningful conversations that really help people develop and grow spiritually. And
Mhm.
and all of that was happening for me too. So that the study of astrology is sometimes most beneficial to the student more than anyone we even end up helping, you know?
Mhm.
Um, the other question that I had for you, Kendall, is, what were some of your challenges or what would you like, having gone through it with hindsight, what would you tell people to be prepared for, or how would you try to help people through any of the potential stumbling blocks that might come along with taking a full year-long course?
Definitely. Well, yeah, I'd mentioned a couple of times just being a complete beginner. I felt a little overwhelmed when I first entered the course by other students who just knew more and just knew how to read a chart, and so that felt a little overwhelming for me as a complete beginner. Um, I guess on like kind of like a counterpoint to what I just said about how it was nice to meet every week. And something that I do appreciate about this course is the live format, rather than like pre-recorded sessions. I feel like that keeps the online learning really alive for me. But I do really cherish courses where we get to meet together in person and see the classmates face to face and just have that human connection of everyone being in the same space.
Right.
um, is Yeah, that's just one element that it's like it is there in some ways being online, but it's not the same as being in physical presence.
Right. So you kind of have to be prepared for the fact that you're in a virtual community of people. You are getting to know people. You're having conversations. People are on camera. People come on the mic. We talk just like this. But it, I feel the same way. Like every time that I go to the yoga studio and teach a class, with live people, I'm just like, I wish that, but the problem has been obviously that, um, for teaching a full year long astrology course in person, there's, 1/10 the amount of people will sign up.
Totally.
And so obviously making a living, just being transparent here, making a living, the online format, because I can bring people in from all over the world, uh,
Absolutely.
that's why it's done that way.
Mhm.
But I try as a Cancer sun to make the environment as warm and open and share. Like there's a lot of sharing and laughter, and like we all get to know each other as much as we can in the online setting, and
Mhm.
it does. I think it feels like a family, but it also, I think, like there's a lot of students in the courses who are going to meet me over the next 3 or 4 months as I have several conferences I'm speaking at that they're going to go to. And I tell you, like when I finally get to meet people in person, it's such a relief. It's like, oh, thank God we can sit down and like actually hang out. So yeah,
Yes.
that part is it is a bummer, and that's one of the things that I'm hoping to do in the next year. There's a lot of big things happening in my own birth chart in the next year, but one of the things that I'm really hoping for is to have an annual astrology retreat for
Mm.
students, alumni, and maybe people who are interested in learning more about astrology or have maybe want to come and take some workshops or something like that. Because I think, trying to tend to those relationships over time, keeping them, keeping connected with people like you and Spencer, I was just talking about earlier, and so many others, has been really, really rewarding for me. Like my dog sitter is who comes over here frequently, is now also a professional astrologer after taking my course, and like a good friend. And she's like, she dog sits for us when we're gone. It's like, those are the kinds of bonds that I would like ideally love to have with everybody,
You should definitely do that astrology retreat. That sounds great. There could be yoga classes in the morning and
yeah, totally. That's
offerings. Yeah.
That's what we're thinking. We did one years ago. My wife and I did one. She's an herbalist, and so she led an herbal portion in the morning, and I did an astrology portion in the afternoon. And we had, I don't know, like 20 or 30 people, and it was just such a hit. It was awesome. And then we had kids, so it's been harder to do since we've had kids. But at any rate,
maybe a retreat that has like childcare.
Yeah, that's right. Well, we'll hire you because you're like you run a preschool.
Yeah.
So, well, no, then you won't be able to participate. So you can bring maybe one of your employees or something.
Okay.
So at any rate, so last question for you would be, what have you done with the training that you've received, and what are you looking forward to? Where has your education taken you after the first year course?
For sure. Well, after I took the first year course, and then I took when I was about halfway through the first course again, it's something that was kind of amazing about taking the first course a second time is seeing how much I had really learned. Like I think I kind of had a feeling that a lot went over my head in the first year, but then taking it again, I was able to see that a lot had actually really sunk in, and that I understood a lot more than I gave myself credit for. So after I refreshed on the first year, a few months into that course, I started doing by donation astrology sessions in town where I live in Brattleboro, Vermont. And that was really exciting for me because I felt like, preparing for those first sessions I did, I think it was a Sunday afternoon. I had 3 or 4 people sign up in advance. And then the 2 weeks before, I was just reading and just spending hours and hours and hours trying to prepare for the first people. But it was so cool to have that fire under me of meeting with real life people for the first time and talking about their charts. And we did 45-minute sessions by donation, and it was cool to see in that first afternoon of the 3 or 4 clients just how different each person was, and how so different each session was. And I recorded them so I could listen to them back and think about what I would do next time or what went well. And and there were some a couple of those clients who had very some pretty challenging things in their life that were evident in the birth chart, and that came up in the session. And so feel like meeting with those first live clients really brought just a level of humility and reverence too for sitting down and looking into a person's life and their journey. And so it just, meeting with those people just filled me with a lot of gratitude, and I just needed to take a long walk in the woods later and just kind of be quiet. And so I've done a couple more of those days in town. And then I've tried doing a couple one-on-one sessions with people online. I haven't been putting it out there a lot because I have other work that I do during my day and other passions. But that's kind of where it's taken me so far. And then I continue to follow the daily transits and try to make good decisions. And my friends will often call me and be like, what's going on right now? Like, I'm going through this. And I'll be like, oh, well, Uranus just entered your 4th house. Like, it makes sense that this is going on with your dad and stuff like that. So I'm kind of like the on-call astrologer for my friends.
It's amazing how it's such a handy tool for so many different things. I mean, for one thing, it's an ally that you have for the rest of your life for yourself to make decisions with, to track, to watch your own life developing. That alone, to me, is probably the number one thing that most students walk away really thankful for. But beyond that, the ability to help family, to help friends, to sometimes make a little bit of money on the side, doing some part-time gigs. I mean, you've not been out of the program long, so I think that you are, my personal opinion is that I think you're going to do a lot more readings. You're a very thoughtful person and soft-spoken, but smart and firm in the way that you look at charts.
Thank you.
Yeah. And so I think that's attractive for people. And I think, keep doing readings. But it's also, for some people, not all people it will become a full-time thing. Usually it's people who really, this is exactly what they want to do and they're really sure about it. But for a lot of other people, it becomes just this really invaluable tool in language. It's sort of like getting an ability to speak Spanish and knowing that you're going to travel somewhat frequently to Spanish-speaking countries.
Mm-hmm.
You learn a language that you're going to use and that you have love for and that there's a really practical use for. So that alone is worth it. But I think also putting yourself out there and speaking with other people and reading charts, really life-changing. Like you said, it's kind of like, okay, let's take our sandals off here. We're on holy ground. And that experience is the only place to finally really learn astrology. Astrology, everything leading up to the moment where you really start reading for people regularly is, prep in some way. And then when you finally are in the vulnerable space of reading, that's when the most intangible elements of your craft and the most intangible elements of astrological learning start appearing. And they have a personality. I mean, these are oracles and omens that speak. Spirit is speaking through them. So, and that's hopefully that part of the people get a sense of that in the program from some of the live readings that we do as well. But at any rate, the other thing that I wanted to make sure that we mention that you're doing is tell us about the lunar calendars. These are really, really cool.
Yeah. So I make lunar calendars. I've been making them for about 5 years. This is one. It might show up backwards on my camera because I'm on my computer. But
no, that's perfect.
And so they're mandalas. Each month follows the lunar cycle rather than the calendar month. So rather than starting on January 1st, it starts, this year started January 5th, 2019 on the new moon. And then it went to February 3rd, the last moon of the cycle. So it's basically, it's a different way of keeping time, and I appreciate flipping the page with each full cycle rather than like flipping the page with the start of each month. It just brings a sense of completion. I draw them all by hand, so it takes a really long time. I do all the artwork by hand, all the moons, all the grids, it's all handwritten, so it takes a really long time, but I kind of like it that way. And there's a spot for new moon seeds, just for setting intentions for the moon. And I usually work with that, like thinking of the moon as like, I use it as like a way for like, what little things do I want to support my self-care in the month ahead? So usually my intentions are around like, take deep breaths, walk in the woods, like eat nourishing food, exercise more, like, or whatever it is. And sometimes there are like projects and plans there, but I focus more on like, what are my intentions for having good, nourishing quality of life in like the upcoming cycle? And then there's also a grid on the bottom of like Sunday through Saturday. So it's so practical for just planning your life like a regular calendar. It just follows the moon.
Love it. It's so nice. I have one from, I think it was last year's. I don't think I have a 2019 one, but they're beautiful. And it's a lost art to have things handmade. I actually really like Etsy, because on Etsy you can find a lot of like handmade craftsmen, like just people making unique things. And I really appreciate that. And I wanted to make sure that we share that. So, let me put the website up on the screen so that people can actually see the website.
Yeah.
So here is the lunarmandalacalendar.com.
Yep.
And there's going to be, if I have this, there's a few left for 2019. Is that right?
Yeah, I think there's probably only about like 7 left, 6 or 7 left. But I'm going to be putting a link up tonight for pre-ordering the 2020 calendars.
Very cool.
And so those will be printed. They should be printed by early September and will be out for shipping. And the pre-orders help me a lot to cover the cost of printing. So when people pre-order, it just helps me out to be able to afford to print them and distribute them to people.
Beautiful. Yeah. Well, check it out. There's also a place where you can book an astrology reading. Kendall likes to say that she is like interested not in being thought of as a professional astrologer, but as someone who will sit down and have a nice casual conversation with you about your birth chart. I will tell you that is humility speaking. She's a fine professional astrologer who has had good training, and she will do a great job sitting with you and talking with you about your chart. And really, in some ways, I couldn't recommend sitting down with students of astrology or people who've just graduated from a program who are trying to get more experience, because there's an eagerness. And like, I think back to my first year of doing like a bunch of donation readings, right? And I can't explain it. It was just the freshness and excitement for me. It was also a contagious thing. It helped make the sessions what they were. And you can't replace that. Like, even though I do sessions all the time and I pride myself on doing some pretty good sessions, you just can't replace the enthusiasm of being really fresh into your practice. It's really special thing to sit with an astrologer as they are gaining those first years of experience. And you'll get the eyes of someone who is, like another way of thinking about it is like, I actually heard a hairstylist, a very, very famous hairstylist, in fact, say this one time that when people are first getting onto the floor after they've completed their training, and he worked in a very sort of very well-known salon in New York City. When they're first getting onto the floor after their training, sometimes people will think, oh, those are the rookies, I don't want them cutting my hair. But he said, no, those are the people exactly who you want cutting your hair, because they're eager to take risks, make a name for themselves, they're excited, etc. And it's not quite the same with astrologers, but I feel like it's really similar in that sitting down with someone like Kendall is a great idea, because Kendall has really fresh eyes and a fresh heart for astrology, and that will help you open up into your chart in ways that are really special. So I really recommend checking out a reading with her too. So
thank you, Adam.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, and the readings too, they're all by donation, because I'm still like in a phase of learning and studying. So
right.
If someone's like on a budget and can't afford a professional reading but has $20 and wants to go deeper into a chart or something like that. Yeah.
I still remember, like, so many sessions where 20, maybe $40, $60 would get donated. And I just remember feeling like there's, and I say this in my classes all the time, because I started with the donation model myself. And I say to people, as long as there's a karmic exchange and you're building experience as an astrologer in the beginning, it's so rewarding. And I think that's why Kendall and other people find so much value in, offering donation-based readings, because the experience is really priceless. To get the experience, it's, there's really no other way of building a practice. So Anyway, thank you, Kendall, so much for just offering so much supportive, thoughtful conversation tonight and helping me promote the upcoming program. It's a joy to have you in class, and you always are one of the people whenever you come on the mic and you say, is it okay if I share something? I always get really excited because you always have very intelligent and really thoughtful ways of processing the material and really good questions. And so I hope that some of that rubs off on other people out there and inspires them to come into the classroom as well.
Thank you, Adam. I'm really grateful to be here tonight and spend time with you. And yeah, I'm excited for all of these people who are starting their journey in the course.
Absolutely. Well, if you guys want to know how to join the course, here's where you can find more information. If you go to nightlightastrology.com and go to the certification courses tab, you can scroll down and find information about it. The upcoming course again starts on June 9th. It meets for a year. I told you pretty much all the details you need to know. The curriculum is outlined there, but if you have more questions, you can email me at nightlightastrology@gmail.com. Up until the 31st of this month, I have an early bird rate. It's $12.99 if you pay in full for the program. It's $1,800 with a 12-month payment plan. So you have a couple of options there. If like most of my students who get out there and do some donation-based work within a year have easily paid off the balance of the program. So it is something that if you plan on using it at all with people, it does quickly pay off. Also, there is a need-based option. If you're someone who really wants to take the program, but you can't afford to because you're a single parent, a full-time student, you're a retiree, you're only working part-time, you're currently unemployed, you're experiencing financial hardship, whatever your story might be, feel free to email me at nightlightastrology@gmail.com. Tell me what's up, and we'll see what we can do. I have a sliding scale for need-based tuition, but I try to make it possible for anyone to take the program. And I trust that people will pay that forward, or that karmically it comes back to me in good ways, meeting more good people, learning more good things myself. So that's the gist of it. If you have any questions, again, feel free to email me or visit the website at nightlightastrology.com. Kendall, thanks so much for being here again. And yeah, I look forward to seeing you. Kendall's in my advanced program right now, so I'll see you in class soon.
Sounds good. Yeah, I'll see. Or do we have class tomorrow?
Do we have class tomorrow? Let me think. Yes, we do. We're going back over zodiacal releasing tomorrow.
Cool. So I will see you tomorrow.
All right, sounds good. See you later.
Okay. Good night, Adam.
Bye.